The celebration of life of William Q. Judge is a special occasion. All over the world, the lodges are commemorating Mr. Judge's life and work. This concept of unity is important as it has tremendous force into the world that we live in. ULTDC is celebrating this special occasion by readings and a biographical talk. The first reading will be from the notes of the Bhagavad Gita, the second from the writings of HPB, and the third from Echoes from the Orient, followed by the talk on the life of Mr. Judge, and finally from the writings of Robert Crosbie in memory of WQJ. Then we would like to get to know each other better as we appreciate Mr. Judge's service and rededicate ourselves to our duty of uplifting ourselves and humanity. We will then continue our review of Light on the Path. Okay. All right. Beginning with reading number 1. All of us are brought to this study by our own request made to our higher self, who is Krishna. It does not matter whether he is now consciously aware of having made the request, nor whether it was made as a specific act in this life or in many other precedent one. It was made and it is to be answered at the right time. Some of us has asked this many times before, in ancient births of ours in other bodies and other lands. Others are making the request now, but it is more than likely in the case of those who are spurred on to intense effort and longing to know the truth, and to strive for unity with God that they have put in the petition ages since. We take up the gauge over and over, life after life, and experience after experience, never completely defeated if we always look to Krishna, our higher self. All the passings show of life, whether fraught with disaster or full of fame and glory, are teachers. He who neglects them neglects opportunities which seldom the gods repeat. And the only way to learn from them is through the heart's resignation. For when we become in heart completely poor, we are at once the treasures and the dispersers of enormous riches. The attitude to be assumed then is that of doing every act, small and great, trifling or important, because it is before us to do, and as mere carrying out by us as instruments of the will of that deity who is ourself. This practice is the highest, that which someday we must and will learn to perform. Effacement in the Supreme Spirit is gained by the right-seeing sage whose sins are exhausted, who hath cut asunder all doubts, whose senses and organs are under control, and who is devoted to the well-being of all creatures. If the last qualification is absent, then he is not a right-seeing sage and cannot reach union with the Supreme. It must follow that the humblest intimidator, everyone who desires to come to that condition, must try to the best of his ability to imitate the sage who has succeeded. And that is the word of the master. For he says in many places that if we expect to have his help, we must apply ourselves to the work of helping humanity to the extent of our ability. No more than this is demanded. Krishna says that those who, with the eye of spiritual wisdom, see the self as all, begin to reincarnate with that belief ingrained in them. Hitherto said they had come back to earth without that single idea, but possessed of many desires and ideas which separated them from the self. Now they begin to fully return at rest in the self and working out their long accumulated karma, and at last they become a Mahatma or great soul.
Read from the page. The first chapters were written by Mr. Judge. The last 7 or so were written by Mr. Crosbie. You can't hardly tell the difference.
Reading number 2 from the writings of H.P. Blavatsky. Harmony in the physical and mathematical world of sense is justice in the spiritual one. Justice produces harmony and injustice discord. Discord on a cosmical scale means chaos and annihilation. If there is a developed immortal spirit in men, it must be in everything else, at least in a latent or germinal state, and it can only be a question of time for each of these germs to become fully developed. There is a way to avoid reincarnation, and Buddha taught it in his doctrine of poverty, restriction of the senses, perfect indifference to the objects of this earthy sphere, freedom from passion, and frequent intercommunication with the Atma, soul, contemplation. The cause of reincarnation is ignorance of our senses and the idea that there is any reality in the world, anything except abstract existence. From the remotest antiquity, mankind as a whole have always been convinced of the existence of a personal spiritual entity within the personal physical man. This inner entity was more or less divine, according to its proximity to the crown, Christos. The closer the union, the more serene man's destiny, the less dangerous the external conditions. This belief is neither bigotry nor superstition, only an ever-present instinctive feeling of the proximity of another spiritual and invisible world, which, though it be subjective to the senses of the outward man, is perfectly objective to the inner ego. Furthermore, they believe that there are external and internal conditions which affect the determination of our will upon our actions. Thanks.
Reading number 3 is from Echoes from the Orient, and it's a broad outline of theosophical doctrines by W.Q. Judge. What happens to the Western mind to be a very strange superstition prevails in India about wonderful persons who are said to be of immense age and who keep themselves secluded in places not accessible to the ordinary traveler. So long has this been current in India that the name applied to these beings is well known in the Sanskrit language, Mahatma, a compound of two words, Maha, great, and Atma, soul. The belief in the existence of such persons is not confined to the ignorant, but is shared by the educated of all castes. The lower classes look upon the Mahatmas as a sort of gods and think most of the wonderful powers and great age. The Pandits, or learned class, and educated Hindus in general have a different view. They say that Mahatmas are men or souls with unlimited knowledge of natural laws and of man's history and development. They claim also that the Mahatmas, or rishis as they are sometimes call them, have preserved the knowledge of all natural laws for ages, not only by tradition among their disciples, but also by actual records and in libraries existing somewhere in the many underground temples and passages in India. Some believers assert that there are also stores of books and records in secluded parts all over that part of Tibet, which are not known to Europeans, access to them being possible only for the Mahatmas and adepts. The credence given to such a universal theory grows out of an old Indian doctrine that man is a spiritual being, a soul in other words, and that this soul takes on different bodies from life to life on earth in order at least to arrive at such perfect knowledge through repeated experience as to enable one to assume a body fit to be the dwelling place of Mahatma or perfected soul. Then they say that particular soul becomes a spiritual helper of mankind. The perfected men are said to know the truth about the genesis of worlds and systems, as well as the development of man upon this and other planets. Were such doctrines held only in India, it would be natural to pass the subject by with this brief mention. But when it is found that a large body of people in America and Europe hold the same beliefs, it is interesting to note such an un-Western development of thought. The Theosophical Society was founded in New York in 1875 with the avowed object of forming a nucleus of a universal brotherhood, and its founders stated that they believe the Indian Mahatmas directed them to establish such a society. Since its foundation, it has gained members in all countries, including people of wealth as well as those in moderate circumstances, and the highly cultured also. Within its ranks, there flourish beliefs in the Mahatmas of India and in reincarnation, and its twin doctrine, karma. This last holds that no power, human or divine, can save one from the consequences of acts performed, and that in this life we are experiencing the results due to us for acts and thoughts which were ours in the preceding incarnation.
Thank you. Well, we will tell you a little bit about Mr. Judge. He was a very active person, and this is just a little bit of what he did. He became known as the preserver of pure theosophy. He exemplified discipleship in every aspect of his thought and action. The disciple strives to gain critical knowledge of and master powers, first found in himself, and use them only on behalf of the whole of humanity. HPB said that Mr. Judge had been a part of the Great Lodge for eons in the past, and that he was one of those who, with little difficulty at rest, had reincarnated several times in order to carry out the work of the Great Lodge. She said at least one time that he was her only friend. His entire heart and soul was dedicated to the work of Theosophy for the last 22 years of his 45 years of his life, as we knew as Mr. Judge. He was so determined that the Theosophical Society would be successful that he would read from the Bhagavad Gita and discuss the details, even though he was the only one present at some of the meetings. Will such as this makes its way through every obstacle. Mr. Judge left us jewels, over 200 publications. This is the list of them right here, which I will add it to the talk when we put it on the internet. And if anybody wants one of these articles or a whole book, our lodge and Phoenix has it. So just contact us and we'll get you whatever you want. In his musings of the true theosophical past, he said, remember that life is the outcome of the ever living. If you have come to comprehend a little mystery of the mystery of life, it can value its attractions according to their worth. These are no reasons why you should walk forth with solemn tolerance to blight the enjoyments of other men. Life to them is as real as the mystery is to you. Their time will come as yours has, so hasten it for them if you can, by making life brighter, more joyous, and better. This old soul known as to us as William Conn Judge was born on April 13, 1851, in the household of Frederick H. and Mary Conn Judge in Dublin, Ireland. Mary died in birthing their seventh child, so it was left to Frederick to raise 7 children, including the newborn baby. Young William became seriously ill in his 7th year. The attending doctor was unable to arrest the rapid deterioration of his health, and after watching the child slip through his hands, he informed the family that their son was dead. But to the amazement of all, perhaps perhaps as the doctor had turned to console the family, life started to come back to William. The doctor did not understand what happened, but young William slowly regained his health. The recuperating boy was markedly different from the child who had come to the gates of death. His character and interest changed. The family discovered that William could read, an ability no one had detected before his illness. He plunged into serious volumes of mesmerism, Rosicrucianism, phrenology, magic, the inner meaning of the Gospels, and Theosophy. His family was shocked that he could even read these books, let alone understand them. When Mr. Judge was 13 years old, his father, along with his six brothers and sisters, immigrated to the United States. They arrived in New York on December 14, 1864. Perhaps the magnetic link of reanimation by another so abruptly renewed his in his illness was never fully vitalized in the physical sense, for he never acquired a strong physique. Without being sickly, he was frail, but indomitable and persevering will beyond his years. An example, in his youth, you've all heard this story about him on the bank of a stream with a bunch of boys, and they were all older than him too. And they cheered and mocked him because he couldn't swim, and they went from the bank over to the island in the middle of the stream there. And William, who was the last one standing there, plunged into the water. When he got out of his depth, he let himself sink. He just touched bottom, ran a few steps on the river's bed, rose for a breath, he kicked and sank and took more steps, and repeated the process until he got to the margin of the island to be drawn out half unconscious by his astonished playfellows. The chronicle of this event, Jasper Neiman, was a pen name for Wizard Archibald Kitney, who is very well known for people who read Theosophy, added that nothing could be more characteristic of Mr. Judge. He would walk over red-hot plowshares or here to India to do his duty. She quoted from here. So Mr. Judge, number 4, called duty the royal talisman. The family, having settled in Brooklyn, where despite hardship, Mr. Judge attended school, studied law, and between 1860 and 1871, while William was preparing for the war, his father died. He, number 5, became a citizen of the United States in April 1872, and number 6 was admitted to the bar, State Bar of New York, and practiced law for the remainder of his life, specializing in commercial law. His compassion, integrity, conscientious intelligence were widely recognized, and he was called the Christ of the legal profession. Number 6. In 1874, he married Ella Smith, a staunch Methodist lady who bore him a child. His natural fondness for children, they would gather around him when he would appear in public, and he would sit around and not read and things like that. But that he loved his children. He loved children, and I'm sure all of you too. This increased their pain when their infant daughter died of diphtheria. In the same year, Judge read Colonel Henry Steele Alcott's account of the spiritualistic phenomena, which was of much interest at that time, and the visit of a Russian lady of distinguished birth and rare educational and natural endowments. McCall arranged a meeting with the judge and HPB at her apartment at that time at 46 Irving Place, New York City, as the reader was saying that this is established in New York. Where they established the Theosophical Society at that time. It was our eye that attracted me, the eye of one whom I must have known in lives long past. She looked at me in recognition at that first hour, and never since has that look changed. Not as a questioner of philosophies did I come before her, not as one groping in the dark for lights that schools and fanciful theories had obscured, but as one who, wandering many periods through the corridors of life, was seeking the friends who could show where the designs for the work had been hiding. And true to the call, she responded, revealing the plans once again and speaking no words to explain, simply pointed them out and went on to the task. It was as if but the evening before we had parted, leaving yet to be done some detail of the task. It was teacher and pupil, elder brother and younger, bent on this one single end, but she with the power of the knowledge that belonged but to lions and sages. This preceding account alter judge for life and profoundly affected the Theosophical movement. Having seen the lion's glance, the diamond heart of HPB, he spent many evenings learning from her. He later wrote down Don Dar, Malavan Carr, was a student born of HPB and born in 1857, who passed on his possessions before crossing into Tibet, later to join his master in 1885. This is the student who had advanced very fast, very well. It was after 12 midnight to 4 a.m. that I heard and saw most while there in New York, Mr. Judge said. Materializations of solid objects, as well as temporary illusions, the duplication of letters, precipitation, strange sounds, and psychokinetic transportation of objects from one room to another were all witnessed by this eager student. But all that paled and grew dim before the glorious hours spent in listening to the words of those illuminated ones who came often late at night when all was still and talked to Mr. Alcott and myself, Mr. Judge, by the hour. At our suggestion, HPV, Alcott, and Judge agreed to found the Theosophical Society, which was done in New York and inaugurated November 17, 1875. Later, Mr. Judge helped HPV prepare Isis and Veil. He suggested the term elemental to indicate centers of forces acted upon by conscious agents. The publication of Isis aroused much interest in Theosophy, and a constellation of brilliant intellectuals gathered around HPV. HPB declared that, number 12, WQJ was a channel of pledge directly to the masters. She named him as her agent for America and teacher in the esoteric section of the Theosophical Society. Number 13, when she sailed with Colonel Olcott for India in December 1878, a void was left in the 27-year-old judge's life. His isolation, domestic difficulties, and the demands of his profession all conspired to withdraw Judge from the active theosophical work, but its inner resources were cultivated and refined during this time. From October 1879, continuing to 1883, Damodar and Judge exchanged many beautiful and moving letters. Damodar's closest to HPB and the Mahatmas inspired Judge to live only for Theosophy. Number 15. Judge left New York in 1883. He had always wanted to go to India and those places, so he was finally called. He got to Paris in March 25 and traveled with HPB to London and England to assist her with the initial preparation of the secret doctrine. He traveled to India in July. He gave a lecture on Theosophy and the destination of India. It was very well received, and he went around in India, went to do other lectures. While he was there, he defended HPB against charges that attracted worldwide attention near the time of his arrival at the Theosophical Society's headquarters in Edinburgh. Mr. Judge dealt with the press and others. The press began to accept his articles on Theosophy, later articles from other Theosophists, and some inquirers became members of the Theosophical Society. In the end, the charges against HPB were proven to have been completely false. Judge returned to New York via England in November. His finances and position quickly improved, and he set about reorganizing the Theosophical Society in America. Number 16. In 1886, the American Society, the American section, was formed with Judge as permanent general secretary. He gathered willing workers to expand the influence of the movement across the country. Branch societies were established, and Judge started the Journal of the Path in 1886. Let's listen to this right here. To give them a continuous flow of spiritual thought. He became a literary fountain from whom flowed a ceaseless stream of brilliant and inspiring teachings. He wrote many of the articles for the Path under various pseudonyms. HPB called its contents pure Buddhi. Number 17. Down the list here. In 1888, an epitome of Theosophy was published and widely read. Robert Crosbie read it, and joined the Boston branch of the Theosophical Society. When Judge met him for the first time, he said, Crosbie, you're on my list. He soon became the most energetic worker of the Boston branch. 1889 saw the publication of the Theosophical Forum, which contained, under Judge's direction until his death, The yoga aphorisms of Patanjali, echoes from the Orient, appeared in 1890, followed by a rendition of the Bhagavad Gita, which is this little part of the book right here, and Letters That Have Helped Me. This is this book right here. Judge aided in the initiating of the Oriental Department of Papers. He consisted of translations of Eastern scriptures. In 1893, The Ocean of Theosophy appeared. This right here. Makes it easier for Westerners to understand what is the secret doctrine. Judge's understanding administrative duties steadily increased. He was called upon by HPV to help the critical phases of the innermost aspect of the movement. The Theosophical Society elected him president, vice president in 1890. Under his inspired direction, the American section became the largest of the sections, and he generously shares its prosperity with the headquarters. The New York Sun published a derogatory piece on HPV in July 1890. Judge represented her in a suit against the paper. The Sun concluded that the charges were utterly without foundation. The paper published an apology in 1892 and printed an article by Mr. Judge on HPV's life under the title "The Disappearing She." Now that the master has read through, she had already died. The forces antagonistic to the Theosophical movement rapidly regrouped to focus on addiction on Judge. They struck just when Judge was appreciated most deeply by sincere students of Theosophy. In 1893, the honored place given to Theosophy at the unique World Parliament of Religions in Chicago was due in great measure to the Judge. But in Wagner's Standard Dictionary of 1895, it listed Judge as a specialist in theosophical concepts and included dozens of definitions for theosophical and Sanskrit terms written by him. Perhaps because of his brilliance and compassion, his exhaustive devotion and energy, and his selfless service to the masters, the wide range of accusations made against HPV in their lifetime emerged again to be thrown at him. During 1893 and 94, he was charged with one crime he was incapable of committing: abusing the names of masters. The accusations were dropped. Robert Crosbie and a colleague drew up a careful account of the situation and presented it to the Boston Convention in 1895. On the vote of 190 to 9, the section became the Autonomous Theosophical Society of America, with Judge as president. At the end of 1894, Judge warned his closest workers that the karma of his body dictated that it should die in 1895, though it might be made to survive by extraordinary means. Early in the year, he went to Mineral Wells, Texas for a few weeks' rest. After the Boston Convention, he again traveled, but the strain of events began to show. Curtailing his public engagements, he continued to write and make plans into 1896. Number 21, on March 21, at about 9 a.m., he quietly passed from this world and delivering an occult aphorism: there should be calmness, hold fast, go slow. Despite the warnings given by the judge, his absence left his closest lieutenants in confusion. Ask Crosbie, judge always often inquires. He thinks and acts as I do. On UOT of DD in June, we will hear that Robert Crosbie took up where Mr. Judge left off and established UOT to continue to put out the fundamental principles of pure theosophy and the exemplification and practice of those principles through a true realization of the self, a profound conviction of universal brotherhood. So I'll now be reading number 4, the memory of William the Judge by Robert Crosbie.
Speaking of Mr. Judge as anybody might have known him, as a human being like ourselves, he was humble, unassuming, modest, strong, patient, meek, courageous, an organizer beyond comparison, with powers similar to those possessed by HPV, and never using them in any way but to smooth the path for those who desire to follow the road of knowledge. He was kind and patient, as we do not often find with tremendous forcefulness. He had extraordinary powers of organization with a perception that could look into the very motives and minds of others, could see traitors around him, could read the hearts of those desirous of injuring him, and yet in all his intercourse with them, paving the way for them, remaining ever kind. For the one who most injured him, he had only this to say when friends about him spoke their denunciations: never mind what others do. Put no one out of your heart. Go on with the work you see. Work will tell in time, and all those follies of others, follies of ignorance, will fall to nothing. Then, when the time comes, we will all have gained strength. When those who have fallen away for a while come back, there we will be with open arms, as strong brothers, to help them find the path and smooth out the effects of errors that have been created through ignorance. His was a wonderful knowledge, and his was a wonderful power. But we know, perhaps some of us do, at all events, that what was really the cornerstone was rejected of the builders. The being was soon neglected, and his works neglected by those who should have seen and known. The whole misunderstanding which finally led to the disruption of the Theosophical Society lies at the very point HPB and WQ Judge could not be separated. They came together, they worked together, and they are together. Understanding this, that there was no link missing in the chain of those who worked in the cause, constitutes the door that opens avenues of knowledge to those who seek. To imagine that knowledge can come in any other way than through the regularly developed channels is to make the greatest mistake. In that chain of being, reaching from the very highest down to us, no link can be missed. We cannot pass over the link immediately above us. That link must be understood before we can pass to a still higher one. So, while the philosophy recorded has been given out, its ideas spread throughout the world by different societies, each member needs to answer for himself the question: does he really know the truth of the philosophy? Is he able to see from the heart out? Does he know the straight line of communication, or is he merely following statements and claims made? The door for the Westerners is through William Q. Judge, just as the door for the world was through HPV. Those who fail in that recognition must fail in obtaining the benefits that flow from the great communication.
Thank you very much for being with us today, here platform and online. We're going to have a few minutes of reflection on what was said. And as you have comments, we will certainly love to entertain them. And then we will close the meeting and take a few minutes to reflect, to refresh ourselves and start with the light on the path.
To me, it was interesting. For the first time, I realized how early he actually died and how much he was able to accomplish in this short time span in this body. So I never realized that he died, what was it, like almost like 45 or 46?
45.
45. Yeah. Amazing.
He only had 20 odd years, 22 years, I think it was, in Theosophy. And he did all this stuff. Plus, he traveled all over the place too, and he opened lodges in the United States. It's just amazing what he did. And he was true to his word. He said, "Duty is a royal talisman," and he certainly did his duty. And he was a good role model for all of us to follow. But then it says in the teachings too, if we do our best, we do all that is necessary. So all of us are not capable of doing this, but we can all do something. Well, a lot of information was put out today. The old timers, if the people that have been involved in this movement for a long time, heard some of this stuff, again, and these things they've heard before. But it's just amazing to me that he had this depth of understanding to lay this in front of us and to help in the movement the way he did. We will reflect on this a little bit more and then close the meeting.
I think Mr. Judge also played a strong role in simplifying a lot that is taught in the secret doctrine, so it's easy for people to understand. And that really is many ways a stepping stone for many of us, because secret doctrine is still so abstruse and abstract. But he was able to distill it down to something more practical and relatable. So
and there's a lot of stuff in here too, and it's very simple. Most of us can understand it.
Yeah.
But this is the detail.
yes,
And a lot of this is understandable, but it's also things that are very deep for us that we can pick out, understand it better by reading it's a chapter. It's 18 chapters here. There's about that many chapters here. It's covers the whole. I believe it's 18 chapters. Yeah, section. Well, it's in two volume, 15, 18, yeah, 18 chapters in the last and second. So, book 1, book 3. Yeah, well, anyhow, he did really a good, I thought, wonderful job of making this more understandable to the mind. We and we get to the point where we talk about the individual or personality and that kind of thing, which is what will not be. I mean, the personality is something that changes from life to life. So it was very. This is not the first time I've done this, but the first time. It's always kind of like the first time. How could somebody do this much work in 20 odd years?
Mhm.
So we will close the meeting at this time for this part of it, and take a few minutes break if you keep on thinking about this thing, and come back. And what time is it now?
11:46.
About noon. And